It is now my honor to introduce the first plenary session of this conference, which will be given by Carol Reed. The title of her presentation is How to Survive and Thrive as a Language Teacher of Children. You must have found a little straw on your seats. Don't throw it away, you will need it. You will be given instructions in a while. Carol Reed has over 30 years' experience in ELT as a teacher, teacher trainer, academic manager, materials writer, and educational consultant. Carol has taught students of all ages and levels, from very young children to adults. Carol's main specialization is in early years and primary language teaching. She has run numerous teaching education courses and worked as a consultant in many different countries in Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Carol has also published extensively in the field of teaching English to children, including course book series such as Footprints, supplementary materials, online storytelling and CLIL projects, book chapters, and articles on pre-primary and primary ELT methodology. Carol's publications include the award-winning titles 500 Activities in the Primary Classroom, as well as the primary course book series, Bugs and Tiger Time. Her latest publication is a new global preschool course, Mimi's Wheel. Carol is a former president of IATEFL. You can find out more about her by visiting her website, www.carolreed.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Carol Reed.
One in the middle, no? Una pantalla en el medio, no? Okay, good morning, everybody, and it's really, really lovely to see everyone here. And before I begin, I would just like to extend the warmest thank you to the British Council for inviting me to be with you here today. I've come to Mexico many times over the years, and the last time I was at BBELT was in 2013. And it's fantastic to see how it's grown and still growing and still such a popular event. And this conference, of course, is about transformative teaching. Transformative teaching that I think we all aspire to for ourselves and for the children that we teach. But at the same time, reality kicks in. And in order to be able to transform anything, we need to actually survive in our classrooms. We need to be able to cope with the children that we have and the situation that we're working in. And we also need to be able to thrive. In other words, to blossom and to flourish with what we're doing. And you know something, when I think about my own teaching and the talks that I give to teachers, I realize that most of the time I'm focusing on the children and how we can make things better for them, how we can make their learning more effective. And I think that's a very natural thing for all of us as teachers, because actually one of the skills that we really have as a group is empathy. So we're looking to see things from other points of view. But what that means sometimes is that we never focus on ourselves. And in fact, we feel guilty if we focus on ourselves. But when it comes down to it, if we are going to transform anyone's life and make education into a really positive experience for our children, we need to be thriving and blossoming as well. And let's face it, and as the ambassador said and pointed out, teaching is a stressful and exhausting kind of business. And so what can make teaching stressful and exhausting? And I wonder if there are some universal qualities or some particular Mexican ones as well. And at this point, and I'm just going to give you like a very short time, 30 seconds, a minute, and I want you to identify the person next to you and just to think of 6 reasons why teaching can be stressful and exhausting. So you're going to have very little time. 6 reasons. Okay, over to you. Off you go. Off you go. Okay, I'm going to use my tambourine that I use with my children, but I don't think I've ever had quite such a big class to use it with. So when you hear the tambourine, we come back together. Now, of course, I can't take feedback about this, but I'm going to suggest some possible reasons. And what I would like you to do is, if you thought of those reasons, which I bet you did, a lot of them, or if you agree with them, just give me a nice kind of Mexican wave, okay? If you thought of them. So what can make teaching stressful and exhausting? Well, some possible reasons. Number 1, challenging behavior. Anybody thought of that? Woo! Okay, so challenging behavior. And you know something, very often, it's not actually the children who are really seriously disruptive that can be stressful for us as teachers, but actually it's that kind of constant low-level disruption, the kind of out-of-seat behavior, talking out of turn behavior, that is low-level, that's not really important, but it can be very stressful. Next point, unrealistic expectations on the part of parents, on the part of the institution. Yeah, you're all waving. Yes, it's difficult to see with these lights. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, you know, I've sometimes worked in an institution where, because children are actually starting to learn English at the age of 4, you know, that parents think, well, they should be doing the first certificate by the age of 11. So we need a lot of parent education as well. So that can be stressful too. The next thing, the kind of pressure to pass exams, that we are living in an increasingly test-based culture. And like it or not, we also have a responsibility to our children to get them through those tests. And this often can have a kind of negative impact on our teaching, that maybe we're not able to quite teach in the way that we would like to, and that can be a pressure. Very often we have limited space, maybe small classrooms. Yeah, sorry, you're waving. These lovely waves. Yeah, good, we're all on the same page. Okay. Limited space where we can't necessarily move around, do the activities we'd like to do. And of course, the correlation of that is also with large numbers of students, maybe more students than we would ideally like to be teaching. Okay, we also often have limited materials and resources. Perhaps we don't have connectivity. Yeah, we don't have connectivity when we want it. Perhaps also we're having to use a course book that we don't like very much, but we've got to use it, the children have bought it, and all of that can add to our stress. Also, very often in our classes, we have a lot of diversity and learning differences, and maybe we feel as language teachers and educators that we haven't been specially trained to deal with these kind of differences. And although there is a lot that we can do, that can add to the stress. The next point, do I see any arms waving there? Long hours, okay. We just work our guts out, don't we, as teachers? That's it, long hours, traveling to different venues, preparing lessons, marking, all the pastoral side of our work, and so on. And any other things there? Well, I hesitated to add this last one, but I think I will say it anyway, that actually, and this is perhaps to do with self-esteem, but I think if teachers have low self-esteem, this also increases our level of stress. And this is to do, of course, with the way that teachers are valued in society and the way that they are paid. And as Naomi Klein says in her book, No Logo, societies value what they pay for. And very often, teachers' salaries are not enough for people to really feel that kind of self-esteem, and therefore it adds to the stress. So I really didn't want to depress you all too much at the start of this conference, but I think at the same time, it's important to be realistic. You know, I'm a practitioner, I work in the classroom, and actually we have to think about where we're really coming from when we want to transform our learners' lives. I remember when I started off as a teacher, the kind of timetable that I had. I had a timetable where I started at 8 in the morning, and I actually finished my last lesson at 10 o'clock at night. And I worked from 8 till 1, and in the afternoons, I either had private classes, or there was a contract at the airport, so I used to travel out to the airport and teach there. And then I used to start again back at the centre where I was working at 8 in the evening and continue till 10. Oh yes, and of course, I've forgotten that Saturday mornings I taught children as well. And I know that there's nothing unusual about that. One of the trips I did recently to Mexico in 2017, and I was doing research for a project that I was engaged in writing, and I talked to a lot of Mexican teachers, and the kind of timetable that I described talking to you now looked like a piece of cake. A piece of cake, yeah, a piece of, taco or something. Okay, so, and actually, but through all of that, you know, we are, as teachers, despite that kind of workload, we are expected to kind of light the way for our learners, to transform their lives. And this, have a look at this now, a kind of inspirational quote that has been doing the rounds on social media. Do we like that? No, we definitely don't. What is this about? In order for us to transform the lives of our learners, we need to snuff out our own lives. And what is the point? If there's no more candle and light, how can we possibly light the way for our learners? So actually, we need something else. We need an electric candle with a reliable charger that we can use. It's no good if we're burnt out. Okay, so actually I would far more prefer to share with you this particular quote. Okay, so to care for the teacher is to love the learner. And actually, the implications of that are really strong. If we look after ourselves, the implications for our children and the positive impact on them, their own self-esteem, their well-being, their learning is going to be huge. And not only us, I know there are a lot of directors of schools and things here as well. This is something also for employers, because by looking after your teachers, they in turn influence their children, and performance and results are going to be much better. So actually, what do we need to do in our classes? We need to survive, we need to thrive, and that will give us the basis for the kind of transformative teaching that we're aspiring to. And what I'd like to do now is to share with you 6 survival strategies, okay? 6 practical survival strategies. They're not rocket science, but they're very important. And they come from years, far too many that I care to admit to these days, of teaching in the classroom. Okay, so the first strategy, survival strategy number 1, look after your voice. It's your most treasured possession. It is liquid gold. Without your voice, you can't really do very much as a teacher. Don't speak too loud. I think all of us have a tendency. Our students start making a noise, so we start talking louder. We speak too loud, and of course that affects our children. And actually a good bit of advice that I was given years ago was to speak in a voice where the children have to be quiet to hear what you're saying. And that also has an effect on them as well. The next point, find your natural pitch. You know, sometimes we tend to use a lower pitch for discipline and management. Will you sit down, Miguel, please? Okay. Or a higher pitch for being friendly. That's a really lovely story, Susanna. Okay. You need to find your natural pitch and stick with it. The next point, stay hydrated. Drink lots of water and stay off the coffee, and also the beer, and the tequila, and the mezcal, and the pulque. Okay. And the last thing, and this is where your straws come in, do vocal straw exercises. Now, vocal straw exercises, this is something that years ago, I used to do a lot of theatre and acting in my youth, and I was taught vocal straw exercises as a way of looking after your voice. And it's something that professional singers, professional actors do. And it is remarkably helpful for maintaining and re-coordinating your vocal cords. Now, you all have a straw. Will you please get your straw? Okay, and we're just going to do a few vocal straw exercises now. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate, first of all. I want you to listen, and then in chorus, everyone with your straw to do the same thing. Okay, are you ready? Yes. Everyone got your straw? Yes. I can see at the back there you haven't. Okay, here we go. Oh my God, fantastic. Okay. Okay, now this time, you know, the secret is you mustn't have any air coming through your nose. So this time, could you do it and pinch your nose at the same time? So, Fantastic. Okay, now we'll do just a few police sirens. So listen first. Okay, we'll go. Oh my goodness, you are fantastic at vocal straw exercise. That is amazing. Okay, you can do other things. You can sing a favorite song through the straw. But this is actually serious. And by the way, these straws are paper, biodegradable, nothing to do with plastic. And they are your souvenir. It's also nothing to do with single use. This straw will last you for quite a while, okay? And you can do these exercises. Well, you can't really do it on the bus, can you? People would think you were mad. But the recommendation is if you are using your voice a lot, to do them several times a day. So, strategy number 1 then is look after your voice. Survival strategy number 2, make and break routines. Okay, we have both there because there's a kind of continuum of our learners. With our younger learners, routines are incredibly important in establishing a safe environment and parameters for behavior. And we all know that, those of us who teach young children, we do routines with our puppets, hello songs, we talk about the weather, we have routines for taking the register, we have routines for story time, for many, many different kinds of things. And these routines help us to survive. They help the children too. It's a reciprocal process because the children feel that they are in a safe kind of environment. And the important thing to survive is to establish these routines early on when you meet a class for the first time. This is your honeymoon period. It's your moment to do it. It's the moment when children will be happy to fall in with what you want them to do. It's much harder later on. And of course, what routines do is they create order and security, okay? That children feel safe, they know what to do, things are organized, they are predictable, and they build confidence. They also save you giving instructions. So life is not quite so exhausting because children know what they're supposed to do. For example, if we're now lining up to go out for a break or whatever. They help to foster a learning community because these are our routines for our classroom. This is what we do in our classroom. So it boosts self-esteem and we have that learning community. It also, of course, allows more time for teaching and learning because children know what to do. You don't have to give and repeat instructions all the time, and so there's more time for quality input and practice. And the last point, which relates to the first strategy, is, of course, they help you look after your voice. But actually, so that's the important thing about making routines and establishing routines. But as children get older, we also want to break routines. And if you like, to have surprise routines. And surprise routines involve doing things that are a little bit different. So, for example, we might start our class with a little gym sequence. Okay, I think we'll do this now because you're looking so rested and relaxed. So could everybody stand up, please? Okay, so you ready for a little bit of gym? Yes? Okay, limber up. Okay, first, touch your toes. Go on, touch your toes. Next, run on the spot. Then stretch your arms, mind your neighbors, stretch your arms, and bend a lot. After that, look up. Stretch your arms up high. Imagine you can touch the sky. Finally, relax. Sit down. And then close your eyes and count to 10. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good afternoon, children. Now please open your books at page 42. Okay. Okay. Another way that I like to start, a surprise routine is to use little lateral thinking puzzles. So what about this one? A man rode into town on Monday. He stayed 3 nights and left on Monday. How come? How come? Okay, so we get the children asking us questions, suggesting ideas. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe he had too much mezcal and slept for 2 nights instead of 1 and got the days wrong. Okay, anybody got any idea what the answer is? Yeah, you know it. Okay, do you want to shout? Big voice. She's brilliant, wonderful. Okay, lovely. Or for example, you might start with a little game where you tell the students what you like. So you might say to them, I like apples, but I don't like pears. Okay, and they have to find out the criteria for what you like and what you don't like. I like green, and I like yellow, but I don't like red, and I don't like blue. And then they start asking you, do you like? And this may go on for several lessons, and you tell them, once they get it, not to tell anyone else, okay? So I like running, I like swimming, I don't like dancing, I don't like walking. Any ideas? What's my criteria? Any ideas? No? Okay, well, so you carry on like this. They get there in the end. I like anything with a double letter. I like apples, but I don't like pears. I like running, but I don't like walking. Okay, so yeah, you got there. Okay. Okay, good. So, survival strategy 2, make and break routines. Okay, survival strategy 3, look for ways to be creative. And this helps you feel good about your teaching because you're using imaginative approaches to your teaching. And it also, of course, makes learning more engaging for the children. But creative teaching doesn't mean a kind of constant firework display. You can be creative in very small ways. For example, lining up, which I don't know in Mexican schools, but in Spanish schools, children seem to be lining up all the time to go into class, to go out of class, to go off for lunch, and so on. So let's make it into a little creative activity. Let's line up in order of surname, alphabetical order of surname, or name, or birthdays, or height, for example. The same with the register. How boring it is taking the register. Yes, I'm here, that kind of response. Let's turn it into a learning opportunity. For example, we assign a country to all the children, and you call out the names of the countries, France, and they respond with the capital city, Paris. And of course, when you start doing this and being creative in these little ways, children will suggest ideas as well. So, for example, they say, let's all be wild animals. When you call the animals, we say the noise, or we name the baby. So, lion, and then it would be cub, or raw. Okay, and I think it's also a good idea to have creative ideas up our sleeve. You know, these activities that we can do, they need no materials, they need no connectivity, they just need you and the students. And one of my favorites that I like to do is called Spelling Gym. Would you like to learn Spelling Gym now? Yes. Yeah? Okay, you didn't sound that enthusiastic. Yes? Yes? Okay, up you get then, up you get. Spelling Gym, stand up. Okay, Spelling Gym. Start off. The default position, hands on your shoulders. Okay, and for any letter on the line, you just cross, okay? For any letter with a stalk, like B, up. Any letter with a stalk below the line, like Y, down. Okay, so let's spell the word apple, okay? A, P, P, L, E. You got the idea, yeah? Okay, I think you're so advanced, we'll just do the whole alphabet really fast. Are you ready? Okay, off we go. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and F! It's always such good fun when the teacher gets it wrong. Okay, do you want to go on? Okay, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Z. Okay, fantastic. Okay, or another little activity now. A little memory game. With your partner, somebody next to you, I'm just going to give you 15 seconds, because you're such a fast group, to remember everything up there. Don't write them down now. I can see you cheating. No. Just remember. Okay. And when I cover it, I want you to write down what you saw. Okay? Off you go. Remember them. See if you can write them down. What did you have? Don't shout them out, just write it down. Okay. Would you like to check? Okay. Now, the point of this, what I then ask the students is actually, what is the topic I'm talking about here? What is the topic? What links all of these, do you think? Okay, this is the challenging part. We've had the memory game, now the challenging part. Okay, so what links the topic? Well, I'm going to tell you. Using technology safely and responsibly. And then what I do is to get the children to identify what all of these mean. So just for example, I won't go through all of them because I'm sure they're obvious, but for example, the heart. Treat people respectfully as you do in real life. The key. My pointer's not working very well. Keep your private information safe. The magnifying glass. Look out for fake news and false sources. The bug, beware of spam and malware, and so on. Okay, so a little kind of activity there. Okay, moving on. Survival strategy 4. Make mileage out of your materials. In other words, a lot of time we spent a lot of effort, making picture cards, cutting up text. make sure that you can reuse those in different ways, in flexible ways. And even with something like a course book text like this, which I'm not expecting you to read, but you know, in a course book, very often, there may be not very interesting WH comprehension questions after the text. So actually make mileage out of your materials, do something different. So in this case, for example, we might get different groups to read one paragraph each and then complete a grid about the nutrients and exchange the information. Or we might get them, children to do a group reading game, which is actually very interesting, the way it gets children paying attention, concentrating, where they read a very short passage, but in groups, taking turns to say one word each and making it as fluid as possible. So these contain vitamins and so on around the group. So survival strategy 4, make mileage out of your materials. Survival strategy 5, and this I think for many of us is actually key. And this is no nonsense approach to classroom management. And our approach to classroom management obviously varies as we go up the age range. But I think all of us know that when we get our classroom management right, everything else falls into place. But when our classroom management goes wrong, everything else goes wrong as well, and little learning takes place. And what we're about, I mean, before we transform the lives of our students, we want some learning to take place. And so I think this is really, really key. And I have to tell you, I will share a secret with you, that I definitely learnt my classroom management skills the hard way. I remember many years ago when I was starting out as a young teacher, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, as the saying goes. And I had a class of 40 10-year-olds in a school in Madrid. And I was doing a communicative activity with them where they had to move around the class asking and answering questions. And I set it up, I think, by the book, and the activity started off quite well. But very soon, things got out of control, and I got really worried. I felt, how do I stop these children? What was the teacher next door going to think about this young teacher who couldn't control her class? And from that experience, I needed an SOS. I needed an SOS, but I learnt 3 lessons that have served me well to this day. And the first lesson is softly, softly. And what I mean by that is when we're working with children, if they're not used to doing the kind of communicative activities that we do in English, go slowly, introduce activities that are short, explain the reasons and purpose for doing them. And actually, if you are worried that children are going to get out of control, then we need to take a decision about how we do our activities. Because nearly every activity that we do can be done in different modes. You take a traditional activity like dictation, we can do it as a whole class activity, maybe making it a little bit more interesting by the students controlling how we pause or go back. Or we might do it as a gapped pair work dictation. Or we might do it as a group activity with the text on the wall and children going to the wall and coming back and dictating it to their groups. But we as practitioners need to take the decision about how we set up the activity that will enable us to manage our classes in a positive way. The next lesson I learned is that there is only one person in the classroom whose behavior you can change. You can force the children to do things, of course, but there's only one person whose behavior you can change, and that, of course, is you, okay? And the implications of that are absolutely huge. The implications in the way that you use a model of influence rather than a model of control. And use strategies like CBG, which some of you may have heard of. CBG stands for Catch Them Being Good. That as teachers, we often spend our whole life focusing on the negative, on the things that children are doing wrong. But actually, if you focus on what they're doing right and acknowledge and praise that, you show that you value their behavior as much as their effort and academic performance. Similarly, with praise, use praise, never empty praise, never fake praise, but use it in a way that shows that you value their behavior as much as they work, and use it strategically. For example, praise where you say, by the way, thank you for waiting your turn, okay, where you're not actually focusing on the behavior as such, but you're acknowledging that it's happened. And the last point there, stay serene, stay serene. If you get worked up and start shouting and show by your body language, sit down there, be quiet, actually your body language and your voice will find reflection in the children's behavior. Play the waiting game. Establish it as a routine that you don't start until you have everyone's attention. And you know what the waiting game is? It's so simple. You wait. You wait. But shall I tell you what the secret is? You wait with open, neutral body language. You don't wait like this. Because that finds reflection and the children will ratchet up things. But if you just wait, what will happen is that a child will notice and will do your classroom management for you. Okay, it's a very powerful tool. The other one that's powerful is the art of the deadly stare. The art of the deadly stare, this is actually, comes from Sue Cowley. It's not my phrase, but I love it. And this is what we can do with our eyes, that we can tell children, even at quite a distance, I don't like what you're doing, not I don't like you, please note. I don't like what you're doing, please stop that now. Okay, could you just practice that for a moment? Could I see your art? Could you all give me a deadly stare? Oh my God, I'm going. That is very, very good. Okay, fantastic. But of course, as children get older, these kind of positive management strategies may not work quite so well with teenagers. And if there isn't a whole school discipline policy, even less. So actually, management becomes a kind of negotiation with our students. Not necessarily explicit, but it may be explicit. We want our students to have autonomy and agency. But at the same time, the deal is you cooperate, you be responsible, you join in, this is our work as a team, and so on. And one of the things that I love to use with many ages of primary and secondary children are choice boards, okay? Choice boards where this, for example, what you've got up here, is what children opt to do in terms of outcome on a unit of work, actually based on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And you can see all the choices the students have there. But there's probably one that they wouldn't choose in particular. Can you identify it? Yeah, exactly. But it's there. And actually, they know, with a sense of humor as well, that the deal is that we have this sort of choice and this autonomy and this agency, as long as we also play the game and contribute and participate. Okay, so survival strategy 6. The last survival strategy, find ways to reduce your workload. I'm not talking about cutting corners, but I am talking about taking sensible decisions. Do we really need to mark every piece of work that our students do? Can we get them doing peer correction? Can we correct it for one thing, for example, corrected for past tense errors? And with our lesson plans, let's keep them organized, yet let's use the same format for our lesson plans so that we can reuse them after we've reflected. Okay, so those are some practical survival strategies, but that's not really the answer, is it? It helps, it underpins, but surviving doesn't necessarily mean thriving. And thriving is sometimes hard for lots of reasons. For one thing, as teachers, we often have a lack of work-life balance. Actually, I have to say, I don't really understand what work-life balance means, because my work is my life, and my life is my work. But it's certainly true that we sometimes, the balance tips, and it's work all the time. We find it difficult to switch off. We're always thinking about our work, problems at school, lesson planning, whatever it is. We get anxious about things that we can't control. In fact, often we spend more time stressing about the things that are out of our control, the horrible course book that we don't want to use, the lack of space, the parents who are difficult to deal with. For example, actually the parents is something we can control. Sorry, that was a bad example. Okay, much better to think about the things that we can control. We also have negative thoughts. How often does it happen? We come out of a lesson and we think, oh, why did that happen? Why did I do that? Why did that happen? We always focus on the negative rather than the positive. And I think also there is a tendency in us as a profession to be perfectionists. And I think there is a culture of this surrounding English language teaching. How often can you think we hear of words like excellent, outstanding, quality teaching, okay? And we're under pressure if we have a timetable of 26 or 30 hours teaching a week. Is every lesson supposed to be outstanding? So I think that is a huge pressure. And I always remember a colleague of mine once talked about when I was in a job where I had to visit help support teachers by visiting their lessons. And a teacher said to me once, Carol, what I'm going to do today is a bread and butter lesson. And I said, bread and butter is fine. Solid, learning outcomes, learning is moving on. And I think we're very hard on ourselves often, this tendency to be perfectionists. And the last point there, we feel swamped by demands. And so actually, this is where we need to focus on well-being. On well-being, which in some areas of literature is kind of equated with happiness, okay? But that's actually a bit simplistic. That well-being is to do with feeling good and comfortable in your skin and about the way your life is going. And there is subjective well-being, the way that you assess how things are going yourself, and the kind of psychological well-being that you have depending on how worthwhile and achievable you think your goals are. And I think, there are 5. One of the things that helps us to identify well-being, and this is based on research work from Sheldon and Leo Bomersky in 2007, that actually we can understand well-being by identifying the qualities of people who have it. And people who have strong well-being tend to be people who invest in close relationships, who have an optimistic outlook on life, who do a lot of exercise, who focus on the moment, mindfulness. Some of you may be familiar with that technique, which is becoming increasingly unpopular in many schools, and who have a sense of purpose and are helpful. And well-being is important for teachers and for children because, first of all, it leads to better academic achievement and performance. There is evidence that children who have a level of well-being tend to perform better academically. And of course, teachers' well-being provides a role model for children's well-being. And there is a kind of cyclical approach. If the children are doing well and achieving and performing well, this also makes the teacher feel good and has an impact on their well-being too. The next point, that it reduces increasing levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. And really, I don't want to make this a depressing talk, and it may not be the same in Mexico, but some of the recent evidence from the UK is really quite worrying in terms of both teachers and children's well-being. And I'm going to just show you a few statistics up here. I'm not going to read them out. But first of all, in relation to children, quite shocking, no? I wonder what it's like in Mexico. And for teachers, you're laughing. It's obviously the same in Mexico, isn't it? Okay, and this one. And in it, yeah, that's very depressing, isn't it? You think of the investment in training teachers, and they leave because they just can't bear it. And in addition to that, in this Young Minds research, 80% of teachers actually said the focus on tests and exams was disproportionate to children's well-being. And 73% of parents, this is interesting, from a study of about 3,500, 73% of parents said they would rather their children went to a school where their well-being was looked after rather than a focus on their grades. So well-being should really be a goal or the goal of education. It's vital for individuals and societies and should be a goal or the goal, okay? And I think, that old adage that school should prepare children for the tests of life rather than for a life of tests, okay? So there is as those examples have shown, I think, there is a symbiosis between well-being and learning. If teachers have a high level of well-being, then this impacts on children's learning. And if children have a high level of well-being, this impacts on their learning too. And similarly, there is symbiosis, this deep underpinning connection between teachers and children. And the way that the teacher is feeling about themselves and about their teaching is going to impact and hugely influence the children. So, what can we do to improve well-being? And we're just going to have a quick look at 4 ways to improve well-being. And these are building relationships, looking for the positive, challenges and mindsets, and the 4 R's. So again, this is all very grounded, practical stuff, but it's so important. It is key. Some of the features of positive relationships you can see up there, and I'm sure you would have come up with them yourselves, but for time, I've just shown them to you here. That these positive relationships that we need with our children, we need with our staff room colleagues, and children need with each other. And of course, examples of ways to positive foster relationships: modeling social skills, being polite, showing respect. Respect is two-way traffic, using please, using thank you, using eye contact, modeling the kind of listening to children, the kind of social skills that we want them to use, we have to model ourselves. Creating an inclusive classroom. This is our classroom. Let's do things together. This is what we do using inclusive language. Making personal connections. And you might do this through little activities. For example, an activity like cat or dog. Do you know cat or dog? People are either cat people or dog people. If you're a cat person, hands on head. If you're a dog person, arms in the air. And then turn to the person next to you and say why. Okay, cat or dog? Off you go. Okay, lovely. Okay, another one. Coffee or tea? Coffee or tea? Coffee or tea? And then you explain why. Okay. And one, especially for you, beer or tequila? Beer? Okay. So make personal connections. Find moments for individual contact with children at the beginning of class, during activities, and so on. Balance praise and criticism. And somewhere that I've read, and I hesitate to tell you the source because I'm not quite sure where it came from, but I think it's a lovely thing to keep in mind, that to make sure you balance with children at least 7 to 8 positive comments to one that is more negative or critical in the way that you relate to children. Because very often we're just full of negative, don't do this, don't, all of that. And actually the positive comments are really important. Include collective activities. So activities like storytelling or singing, where everybody, there is a focus that the whole class has on one thing, in Van Leer's terms, where everybody is intersubjectively engaged. And include cooperative activities. Cooperative activities where, as well as language, children are practicing those social skills that they need so much in terms of working together and building positive relationships. The next thing, looking for the positive. I mentioned this already, and I think we all tend to have this negativity bias. So actually, let's get positive about our children and about ourselves. Look for the things they're doing right, not for the things they're doing wrong. Look for the things they can do rather than the things they can't do. And similarly, in terms of ourselves, look for what's going right for us rather than what's going wrong. And we can do little activities as well. A nice activity I like doing with children with sticky notes at the end of the week. They write on the sticky notes 3 things that have gone well for them, and they then share one with the class. And this kind of raises their self-esteem and gets them to look at what they're doing in a good way. And you can do the same as you're waiting in that bus queue to get home at the end of the exhausting day. Think about the things that went right rather than the things that went wrong. The next thing, challenges and mindsets and the relationship between the two. Challenges, as we all know, are a bit like the Goldilocks story. They're either too easy, or they're too difficult, or they're just right. And of course, that reflects Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, or you might like to think about it in terms of comfort zone, struggle zone, and panic zone. And mindset is to do with the way that we, as well as children, approach challenges. And of course, I'm sure there are many of you will know that I'm drawing on the work of Carol Dweck here of Stanford University. And she makes a difference between people who have a fixed mindset and people who have a growth mindset. And with a fixed mindset, you feel that your intelligence is something that you have or don't have. And if there is a task that you can't do, it's because you don't have the intelligence, and therefore you give up. And you avoid challenges because they're going to make you look stupid if you can't do it. And that contrasts with a growth mindset, whereby you have an internalized idea of your intelligence is something that can grow with your persistence and your perseverance. And so challenges are actually opportunities for learning. So as language teachers, when we're just keeping our students busy and there is no real challenge, we're not taking things further, we're actually encouraging a fixed mindset, because the idea is there that it is doable, and when it becomes not doable, I'm not going to make any effort at all. Similarly, if our work is so difficult that children can't do it, they just give up, and they think, well, I can't do it, I'm not clever enough, I'm not good enough at English, and they give up. So the importance of getting our challenge appropriate so that students are in the struggle zone, if you like, but with appropriate support. Sorry, my voice, I need to do a vocal straw exercise. With appropriate support, they can do it. Okay, and of course, we can pitch our challenge. We can use something that's very appropriate for Mexico, that I like using with tasks, is with a chili sign. You know, 1 chili, 2 chilies, 3 chilies, in terms of the level of difficulty, and either you assign the task or children can themselves. And the last thing, and okay, if the organizers are worried I've gone 2 minutes over time, we're really nearly there. The 4 R's, both for our children and for ourselves. And the first one is to do with being resilient. Resilient, both us and our children. I'm talking about both of our well-beings here. And this, of course, is to do with emotions and to do with feelings. It's to do with perseverance and persistence. And it obviously relates to what I was talking about just now, about a growth mindset, that ability to persist. And also to, you know, when we have challenges and things that go wrong for us, that it's like water off a duck's back, as it were. We see it as a setback, but not as a disaster. So resilient is important. The next thing, to be resourceful. And this, of course, relates to cognition, to actually being resourceful about finding ways, developing our own skills as teachers and competencies, and encouraging and getting our children to be autonomous and managing their own learning. And the next R, reciprocal, okay? And this is the one that is more to do with social interaction, to actually know when is a good moment to ask for help, to collaborate with our colleagues, to get our students, our children, collaborating together. And the last R there, to be reflective, the metacognitive side of things, to actually train our children to reflect on their learning, to be self-aware, but also to apply all of these things to ourselves, of course, and to apply those to our teaching as well. Okay, so we're really getting to the end of things now. What we've looked at in this session is reasons why teaching can be stressful and exhausting. We've had a look at 6 practical examples of survival strategies. There are plenty more. You may like to think of your own, but those are 6 kind of key ones. And we've also focused on well-being and why it's important for learning and performance, children's well-being and our own well-being. And we've had a brief look at 4 ways to improve well-being for children and for you. Okay, so my final message, how to survive and thrive as a language teacher of children. Number 1, develop your own toolbox of practical survival strategies and teaching techniques. We've got to get through the week, the year, the term. This is crucial. Look after your own and your children's well-being. And I think the key thing here is to remember the importance of yourself as much as the children. You know, whenever you go on an aeroplane and they give you the security instructions in case there's an accident, they always say, put on your own oxygen mask first before you can help anyone else. Because if you don't have it on, you won't be able to help anyone. And I think the same is true of teaching, that we need to look after our own well-being, and that will have a huge impact on children's well-being, and this will lay the foundations for us to actually become the kind of transformative teachers that we want to be. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Carol. On behalf of the British Council, please accept this token of our appreciation.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much.
Please join me in thanking Carol again.
Thank you very much. Wow, amazing. Thank you.
We have announcements.